This is the most important checklist video you're ever going to watch for Warhammer 40k, and honestly, we're going to talk about the most overlooked phase of Warhammer 40,000. So today we're talking about the charge phase and the fight phase, but realistically, the big checklist you need to know about is the freaking charge phase. So everyone thinks that this is the phase that just doesn't matter. It takes the least amount of time, so it probably takes the least amount of thought and effort. They're completely freaking wrong, and I'm going to prove it to you today. So I'm going to go through all of these questionnaires. You need to be asking yourself every charge phase to make sure that you can win the game, because this is the easiest phase to just throw the entire game in. So let's break it freaking down. And I'm going to use TTS here to demonstrate and flesh out some of these thoughts, because some of these can be a little bit hard to understand. So don't worry if what I say is a little bit confusing. I'm going to show you physically on screen how you're actually going to do these things. All right. So first off, what is the most important charge to make this turn? This is the number one question you always need to ask yourself, because this is the charge that you probably need to be going first, or it's the charge that you're definitely going to be saving your command point reroll for. You just know this for a fact. Whether that be a 9-inch deep strike charge that you just have to make or you'll lose the game, or if it is the 4-inch charge that you're pretty much guaranteed to make, but if you roll that 3, you could just lose the game. You need to identify the charge that has to be made. Number 2, you have to understand, does your opponent have 2 command points to interrupt? Because this is going to dramatically change the way that you are going to be playing the game. If you're in the charge phase and your opponent has 2 command points to interrupt, and you only have 2 units that you want to charge, a lot of times you just don't charge the second unit. Because why would you charge 2 units knowing that your opponent's going to be able to interrupt and kill the second unit? Now, of course, there can be a variety of factors here. Maybe the unit that he's going to interrupt with doesn't have the ability to kill the second unit that you're charging with. And then at that point, you obviously would not care. But let's say you're charging with a unit of, I don't know, Beast Snaggers and another unit with Beast Snaggers, and they're both charging into Blade Guard veteran squads. Well, we know that the second squad of Blade Guard veterans, the one that you don't activate first into, is going to spend 2 CP and kill your Beast Snaggers. In this particular scenario, I would not charge the second squad of Beast Snaggers unless I also had an ability to counter his interrupt. So, for example, if I had a fight on death ability, maybe I would still go ahead and make that charge, because he's going to spend 2 CP, kill my unit before I can kill him, but then I'll fight on death and still kill him, right? In that scenario, I would probably do it. But if I didn't have the ability to fight on death, well, then in that case, there's no point in charging. I'd much rather him actually have to spend the resources to kill my unit in his turn than allowing him to kill my unit in my turn, if that makes sense. All right. The next question that you got to ask yourself is your opponent staged for a heroic intervention? Now, this is a very, very big deal, okay? And I'm actually going to go onto the TTS screen to kind of flesh this concept out a little bit, because if your opponent is staged for a heroic intervention, you really do not want to be messing around and allowing him to get the heroic intervention that he really wants. And this is going to go right into hand in hand with one of the other things that we're going to talk about in a moment, which is charge order. So, for example, right here, I desperately want to charge my Beast Boss and my Beast Snaggers into this Gladiator Reaper, right? Let's say he's already overwatched, whatever, these models are dead. Now, I really want to make this charge, but I see that right next to this Gladiator Reaper, my opponent has some Blade Guard veterans, and let's just say it's like this to make it easy. And he is posed to heroically intervene, and he has fights first with that Judiciary. So if I charge and I don't get a good charge roll, let's say I only roll a 4 and I have to take the path of least resistance to get into engagement range. Now, I am in engagement range here. Whatever, just say he's here. My Blade Guard veterans are now within 4 inches. They can declare a heroic intervention, make a charge, and since they're led by the Judiciary, they will fight first. Now, before people get get up in arms, they're like, oh, you don't gain the charge bonus when you heroically intervene. Listen, the Judiciary has fights first as an ability, so this isn't the charge bonus that would be giving him fights first. So just move on. He would still fights first because he has it innately, not from the charge. And this could ruin the entire strategy, because now the Judiciary and the Blade Guard veterans will just slaughter all of the Beast Snaggers. So the way that we want to counter this is we identify the fact that our opponent is set up for a heroic intervention. And what we would do in this scenario is, before we charge the Beast Boss, we just charge the truck. So the charge trucks. We charge the truck into the Blade Guard veterans. Now he can no longer heroically intervene. So now I can feel safe to charge all of the Beast Snaggers, right? And thus saving the entire freaking game. No problem. All right, so that's basically a perfect example of why you really need to look out for these heroic interventions, because if you allow your opponent to heroically intervene in certain scenarios, you can just throw the entire freaking game. So let's get back to our checklist here. All right, here we go. Now, we just talked, are the opponent staged for heroic interventions, and we also talked about what is the optimal order of charges. And that's also a very, very big deal. What is the optimal order of charges? Well, kind of like I just showed you, you want to charge that truck first to make sure that you can't get heroically intervened. So that's how, so questions number 4 and 5 kind of go together. So we just basically did that. Now, the next question you got to ask is, does your opponent have fights first? We also just kind of addressed that. If your opponent does have fights first, how can you counter their fights first ability? Because the way that Warhammer 40,000 10th edition works is that you and your opponent will alternate fighting activations starting with the non-active player. So if it is my turn and I'm charging when we go into the fight phase, my opponent's unit that has fights first will fight before my fights first units activate. And that's a very important concept that you're going to have to grasp. So does my opponent have fights first? If they do, can I counter the fights first? Do I have the ability to spend 2 CP and fight on death to counter it? Great. Do I have a unit that just doesn't care if my opponent fights first? So if I charge a battle wagon into a unit of Blade Guard veterans, I probably don't care that he fights first into it. Can you not care? Can you counter it with stratagems? These are the things that you have to ask yourself. If you can't counter it with anything, you probably don't want to be charging that fights first unit, and it's probably better just to allow that fights first unit to kill you in his turn, not in your turn. Where do you want to be after the charges? Do you want to pile into something or not? Now this is very critical, and I see people screw this up all the time. And some of this movement is going to be happening in the fight phase, but you set it up in the charge phase, which is why we have to ask ourselves this question. Where do I actually want to be after the charge? And let me demonstrate an example of exactly what I mean when I say this. So back to the TTS screen. Here we go. So I've set up a little example here. This kind of goes hand in hand in heroic intervention stuff, heroic interventions and things as earlier. But you're gonna love this. Gazgul Mac Erg Thraka. He desperately wants to fight Robuta Gulliman, but it's a 10-inch charge, and it's just not a good charge to risk it on. So what I'm going to do is I am going to be charging Gaz into the Vindicator, kill the Vindicator with my Beast Boss first, and then pile in with Robuta Gulliman. So here's what I want to do. I want to guarantee that Gulliman cannot heroic intervene into my Beast Nagas, because he would slaughter them, and then that would make it almost impossible for Gazgul to charge, to get into Robuta. So let's do this. I'm going to charge with the Beast Nagas first, and I'm going to make sure I stay out of 6 inches of heroic intervention, because I don't want Robuta to charge me, or to heroic intervene. And then I'm going to do just like this. I'm going to put all of my Beast Nagas. Let's say I rolled a good charge, like a 9-inch charge, and I'm going to block myself so that I cannot, or let's say I rolled we'll say I rolled an 8-inch charge. So I'm just going to guarantee that I block myself so that I cannot actually base him anymore. Okay? Now what's going to happen is Gazgul is going to roll his charge. Let's say he rolls like a 7. So he will end up maybe here. We need a little bit of our higher charge. So we're going to call it 8 just so I can demonstrate correctly for the video. So we're going to give him like right here. Then you're going to get the Mega Knob, and then you're going to get another Mega Knob, and then you're going to get a freaking Makari, who's going to be somewhere like here. Now, at this point in time, I don't care if Gulliman heroics into Gaz, because Gaz is going to try to kill Gulliman anyway. So what I'm going to do is I'm happy now. The Beast Boss is going to go activate, kill the Vindicator, and he just will, because he's going to have lethal and sustained and devs on 4s. So he's just going to kill the Vindicator. Now Gazgul is going to get to pile in his 3 inches to end within an inch of Mr. Robuta Gulliman, and he will kill Gulliman. So what I did is I used my charge, and I asked myself, where do I want to be after the charge? Because I don't necessarily want Gaz to fight the Vindicator. I'm going to kill that with a Beast Boss, but I'm going to use my charge into the Vindicator to make it much easier to get into Gulliman than it would have been had I just tried to charge Gulliman, because Gulliman would have been a 10-inch charge, but instead now I only needed the 8-inch charge to do it. All right, I hope you guys grasp that. That is a really challenging concept that is very important for people to understand when we're trying to master things like the fight phase and stuff like that. So back to the PowerPoint view. All right, so we're still in the charge phase here. And I told you this is a very impactful video, and you guys are just gotta stay with me. It's like drinking from a fire hose. It's kind of tough. But where do you want to be? That was number 7. Where do you want to be after the charges? So that's a good demonstration of that. Then you got to ask yourself, what happens next after the charge? Can you survive? Number 9, will a good charge roll mess things up? So if I roll too high with those Beast Nagas, will it block the Vindicator? That is a very, very big thing. Then you need to ask, can you hide your opponents from precision, or your characters from precision? So if your opponent has a ability to precision out a character, do they need to be hidden behind a wall after the charge? These are things you need to know. I'm going to add one more here. Actually, I'm going to add it as a caveat to number 2, because I meant to write this down. Does the opponent have the 2 CP to interrupt? We kind of already spoke about that, but even more importantly, do you want them to interrupt? because this matters a lot. So I'm going to go back to the TTS screen. I'm going to answer this. I'm going to demonstrate exactly what I mean, because sometimes it's better for you if your opponent here, will interrupt, which is kind of weird to think, but trust me, I'm going to blow your mind with this one. All right, so we're back to the TTS board. This is an example of where do I fight first, and do I want my opponent to interrupt? Let's say I charged with Gazcool into these Blade Guard vets led by Marnius Calgar, and I just barely get Makari into engagement range. So I know that with my pile-in, Makari will, of course, get base to base, and then Gaz will get base to base to him, and then this Mega Nob will get base to base with him. But none of the other models will actually get into fight, which is going to make it very hard for me to wipe the squad. Now, I could, of course, get lucky, but it's going to make it very challenging for me, and my opponent's going to be able to pile in and do a lot of damage to me. So I'm going to do things slightly differently to what people might expect. So we're just going to make sure that this is still legal, whatever, like that. At the same time, in the same turn, I'm going to be charging with my knobs into these Blade Guard veterans. Now, I know if I activate with Gaz first, I'll probably kill, like, I don't know, 5, 6, maybe almost the entire squad. But if I don't, then Marnius gets to come in, he'll kill almost all of my Mega Knobs by himself. Just terrible things will happen. So I also know that my opponent's going to interrupt with these Blade Guards and kill all of my knobs and my War Boss. So how would I structure this a little bit differently? Well, what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to choose to activate my knobs first. So my knobs are going to kill the Blade Guard veterans, and I'm going to hope my opponent decides to spend 2 CP to interrupt here, because then he's going to try to get damage to my unit. And when he does this, he's going to pile in. Sorry, let me, and we're just going to pile my dudes, he's just going to pile all of his nerds in. He's going to get basically his entire squad to be fighting. Maybe he drops like one or two guys, doesn't really matter. And he'll kill like 1, 2, 3, 4. Even if he kills 5 Mega Knobs, I still don't care. Or he won't kill that many, but let's say he kills 3. All right, let's say he kills 3 Mega Knobs. Now, when Gaz piles in and this guy piles in, these two guys will also get to fight. So I'll get to fight with much more of my units. Do you see? So now my knobs kill this target. He interrupts, kills some of my Mega Knobs. I don't care, because now I actually get to fight with a lot more of my unit. I get to fight with 3 Mega Knobs instead of just 1 Mega Knob, right? So it was actually advantageous for me in this scenario to allow him to interrupt. If I had CP to be -1 to be wounded, he probably only kills 2 Mega Knobs. So it gets even better for me based off how I do. So I order my activations based off of the results that I want. Because I got a bad charge with Gaz, I did not get all of them within engagement range like I wanted to previously. It was better for me to actually allow my opponent to interrupt and kill some of my unit before I activated here. Meanwhile, that stopped him from interrupting over here and killing all of my knobs. So I wanted to activate first here, allow him to interrupt so I can get more of my units in engagement range. Now, sometimes they might not interrupt, and at which point, okay, no problem. You still preserve this unit, and maybe you'll kill like 4 of them before they activate or something. So it's still better for you either way you cut it, whether he interrupts or not, but it's especially better for you in this scenario if he interrupts. So guys, that is the checklist for the charge phase. I'm going to go ahead and do the checklist for the fights phase as well, simply because it is very similar, and this is going to go pretty quick. But I hope you all understood everything that we were talking about there. It can be difficult to grasp. I wouldn't blame you if you wanted to repeat the video once or twice just to make sure you grasped all of that, okay? And trust me, if you put those things in, will you become better at playing? Yes, you will. All right, fights phase. Question, before you even start any activations, do you want to epic challenge / precision characters? Because you have to make sure that you have the CP for that. Do you need to avoid a command point interrupt? Like we just talked about earlier with the Gaz and the knobs, this is a question that you really need to answer in the charge phase, but you want to reinforce it in the fights phase. What engagements do I need my strats for? Do I need my -1 to be wounded here? Do I need my fight on death here? Do I need my lethal lance over here? Do I need... It doesn't matter what army you're playing. This is a question you always need to identify, similar to how we did in the shooting phase video previously. Can I gain an advantage by allowing my opponent to interrupt? This is probably more of a question to be answered in the fight phase than it was in the charge phase, actually. So whatever, the whole conversation we just had, put that in the fight phase. And then lastly, do I want to die to coherency? Now, this is a very big deal. Sometimes it is advantageous to you to allow some of your models to actually die to unit coherency problems. Now, you can never voluntarily move out of coherency, but you can 100% kill yourself. I mean, out of coherency, and YouTube's going to probably censor me for saying that, but you know what I'm talking about. You can actually kill your models to bring you out of coherency so that you can get advantages from it. Let me go one more time to the TTS screen, and then we're going to finish this video up for you just so I can demonstrate exactly what I'm talking about here. All right, so here we go. Let's say I want a shooting unit. Let's say that this is a Inceptor squad, okay? Here we go, and I'm going to double this up, make this a bigger unit. Let's say that these guys went away, and I only had just these two models. And they charged in to my Inceptor squad like this. Now, when they charge into my Inceptor squad like this, they are going to kill, let's say they get really unlucky and they kill one Inceptor. For me personally, I want to kill this Inceptor. Because now my opponent is going to really struggle. He's going to have to get base to base with this model and base to base with this guy. So that's going to bring him to a position where now this is the only model that he's engaged with. When I go into my pile-in phase, I'm just going to choose not to pile in. And then at the end of the fight phase, I'm going to let this guy die to coherency. Now I don't have to fall back in my turn. It's better for me for this model to die to coherency so that in my turn, I don't have to fall back. I'm able to shoot, move wherever I want to go. So you can use this ability. Gene Stealer cults use this ability all the time. They want to die to coherency so that they don't have to fall back in their own turn. So you can get a lot of benefit in this game to actually letting your models die to coherency sometimes. And this is a question to really be asking yourself in the fights phase. It's an advanced question, and it's one that's not necessarily the easiest to answer. So guys, this was the completion. This was part 3 of my checklist for Warhammer 40k video series. You should go check out the other 2. If you guys ask yourselves these questions at the start of every single phase, trust me, it is going to be amazing, and you are going to dramatically improve your play. If you like this content, like, subscribe, share with all of your freaking friends. My mission here at Happy Cropping is to make sure that everyone who plays Warhammer can play at the highest possible level that they are capable of. And I really just want to elevate everyone's capabilities. So that's why I am gifting all of you with these videos and with these checklists to make sure that you are better players. This is a decision game of skill, not a luck game of dice. Keep that in mind, and I'll catch you on the next one. Trump on. Bye-bye.